Okay, so good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for joining us today for our webinar entitled Qualification 2020 and Beyond, Your Professional Brand and Legal Market Trends. My name is James Marren, and I am team lead on the legal desk of Phoenix, and I am joined today by our guest speaker, Shane Farrell from the Career Support of the Law Society. Shane, thank you for joining us today.
Good afternoon. Thanks very much for having me, Ruth and James. It's great to be on this platform.
Thank you very much, Shane. And also with us today, you will see is Managing Partner and Head of Legal, Ruth Lyndon. Ruth is here to field any questions you guys might have. So you'll see the chat box at the bottom of the Zoom presentation. You can click into that and she will answer any questions you have.
Absolutely. Thanks, James. Great to be here. And thank you to you all for joining us today. And in particular to Shane, we're delighted to have him on board. So yeah, please do, guys, the more interactive this is, the better value you will take from it. So please do pop across your messages in the chat box. It's only myself, James and Shane that will see them, and I will field them. And anything we don't get to during the webinar, of course, we can take offline, and myself and James are available to contact, and Shane also. But I'll hand it back to James, and many thanks for joining.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ruth. So as per the invite email that you'll have received, this webinar is being recorded. So if any of your friends or colleagues are interested in seeing this, do let them know. If they couldn't make it, we'll be posting it onto our website, and then we will post a link to our LinkedIn page as well. But before we get into the webinar, I would just briefly like to introduce Phoenix and the service that we offer. So Phoenix is a specialist search firm. We're focused on professional services, particularly accounting and finance, tax, and legal and advisory. We consider recruitment to be the same as any other professional service when it is delivered correctly. That is consultative, expert-led, and value-add. Our unique mix of professional and recruitment experience enables us to give our candidates the level of professional service which we believe they should expect from their recruitment partner. We believe firmly that recruitment should not just be about transactions, that it is about people. And we believe that we are a recruitment partner that you should trust should you need us at any stage. We know professional services because we are professional services. Our senior management team are professionally qualified in their respective sectors, be it qualified lawyers from top 5 law firms or accountants from Big 4 accountancy practices. Members of staff have even worked within global advisory firms as well. So just to take a quick look at the legal team, so there you have it. It's Ruth Lyndon, who is the managing partner and head of legal. Ruth has 8 years experience in the legal industry, having trained and practiced within top law firms, A&O Goodbody and the Maples Group. Ruth has been in recruitment since 2014, and she has a successful track record of senior hires, both within practice and in-house. Beside her then is me, James Marren. I am team lead, and I am also a qualified solicitor, and I train and practice in top 20 law firm Hayes solicitors. I have been in recruitment since the end of 2018, and I have a track record of successfully placing newly qualified solicitors right up to senior associate level. So just before we get into today's agenda, I'd like to give a bit of a background into why I wanted to do this webinar. So as I've said, I myself am a qualified solicitor, and I remember the post-PPC2 period of the traineeship very, very well, both for being an exciting time because I was about to qualify at the end of this long process, but also because it was quite nerve-wracking. I myself wasn't sure, was I going to stay in the firm that I was in, or was I going to move on? The concept of professional branding was completely alien to me. I had a LinkedIn profile, but it really wasn't updated to its fullest, and I had a CV that I had looked at for maybe 3 years at that point. I think I would have appreciated at the time a steer on what all these things were, and I think it really would have given me a better insight into the market at the time. Another thing that I would have really appreciated was assistance with the legal job market upon qualification. Again, I really didn't have a clue. Being a trainee, you're so wrapped up in your trainee duties that when it comes to qualifying at the end, you're not really sure what the job market is going to be like. And here today, what we're hoping to do is alleviate some of those concerns, especially going in now that we're in 2020 and everything that's going on in the world. Stress levels are probably even more heightened for you guys. So we're hoping that we can steer through that and allay some of those concerns. So let's get into today's agenda. So we're starting out with number 1, professional brand. What is it and why is it important? Number 2, LinkedIn and social media, how to maximize your profile and be consistent. Number 3, CV tips and how to stand out from the crowd. Number 4, legal job market trends and insights. Number 5, we're going to have our guest speaker, Shane Farrell, discuss the career supports on offer with the Law Society. And then number 6, as Ruth already said, we're going to have the Q&A session at the end. So guys, at any stage during the presentation, feel free to pop those questions into the Q&A box, and we will do our best to answer those towards the end of the presentation. So the first part of this presentation, what is professional brand? Well, as Jeff Bezos puts it, your brand is what people say about you when you are not in the room. Your professional brand is your story, who you are and what you stand for. It's how you distinguish yourself as a credible, trustworthy, and skilled candidate. You want to ensure that the information available about you online is visible, available, and relevant to where you are in your career and where you want to go next. So you're probably asking yourself at this point, like, why is this even important? Well, the main reason why professional brand is so important is because your employers care about this. Your employers are going to be looking at your online profiles prior to interview. There is a statistic out there that 83% of the prospective interviewers will be looking at your LinkedIn profile before taking that interview. So it is very important that your online presence, your professional brand matches what they're seeing before them in terms of a CV. It'll give you a networking advantage as well. You want to be following the law firms of interest to you, your own law firms on LinkedIn, and connecting with senior people within the industry, within those firms, to really give you that better chance of networking. This will show that you are serious. Taking your professional brand serious shows that you are serious about your career and helps you to stand out from the crowd. You never get a second chance to make a first impression, so make it one that's going to set you apart, build trust, and reflect who you are. Now, I get it that building a professional brand can seem like a daunting task, and one of the easiest ways to get lost in the process is to not know where to start. So the best place to start is with that LinkedIn profile. Now, I get it, most of you probably have LinkedIn profiles, probably all of you in fairness probably have LinkedIn profiles, but it's important to understand just how significant it is today and the importance of having a completed and up-to-date profile and how to use the platform to maximize your career opportunities. So, with over 675 million users in more than 200 countries, LinkedIn is one of the places you need to get noticed today as a newly qualified solicitor in 2020. With just under 12,000 practicing solicitors in Ireland and around 75% of them on LinkedIn, there's a lot of competition in the market, so you really need to have that complete profile to stand out from the crowd in that crowded marketplace. Again, as I've said before, 83% of interviewers are going to be looking at that LinkedIn profile, so that complete profile is vitally important. And also to be connecting and networking with law firms and peers of interest, and also to be posting content to show that you are an expert within your specialist space. So how to create that awesome profile? Well, think of it this way, put it simply, would you work for a company whose website is under construction? No, and the same applies for your LinkedIn profile. So how do we get that amazing LinkedIn profile that stands above everybody else? What we do is we follow these 7 steps. So the 7 steps to break down are the profile picture, and we'll go through these in more detail through the slides. So the first one is the profile picture, the headline, the summary or the about section, your work experience, education, recommendations, and then also how to get that all-star profile at the end. So I think the best way to explain this is more of a visual representation. So who's this guy here? That's just my profile here, right? You've probably seen it all before, popping in those annoying emails all the time. So that is my profile picture there. So I took this from our company's website, and guys, if you've got a profile picture on the company website, then it's an absolute no-brainer. Just download that, upload it to your profile picture, forget about it, and that's you sorted. If you don't have one of these, what I suggest you do is wear your professional work attire, go behind in front of a blank wall with good lighting and a good quality camera. Most iPhones these days or Android phones these days with good cameras, and get one of your buddies to take that photo and upload it straight away. What you don't want is a photo of you on a night out or on the beach or with pints in your hand or whatever it may be. That's absolutely not what you want. The next part then below that is the headline. So the headline is the part of the profile where you can describe what you do in 120 characters or less. So taking mine, for example, team lead at Phoenix. Team lead, that's what I do for a living. Phoenix is where I do it. Qualified solicitor, that's relevant to the market that I work in because I think it gives me credibility and shows that I'm an expert in the area. I'm a legal careers expert. That's what I do. And then again, James at phoenixrecruitment.ie is my email address. You guys really don't need to put your email address in there. I do that because it's relevant to my market. What I suggest that you do for yours, let's say if you are a corporate associate in Matheson, then put in corporate associate in Matheson. You want to be putting in the level that you're currently at within that firm, the specialism that you currently work in, and the firm that you are working in. If you do something a bit more specialist, like debt capital markets within banking, then absolutely include that as well. Or indeed, if you're a trainee solicitor, simply put in trainee solicitor at Ready Charlton or wherever it may be. Then just at the bottom, just to include as well your location. So when recruiters are doing searches for candidates, they need to know that they're in the location that they're hiring within. So don't forget to add that in as well. So that is and this is very important as well because this is the first part of the profile that people are going to see whenever they log on to your profile. So just moving on to that now. So the summary or the about section. This is your chance to tell your story and not just about listing out the skills and job titles that you've had. A lot of people forget to do this at all, or they might just have a brief one-liner. And again, it doesn't need to be anything long or really big. It just needs to be succinctly laid out where you're at in your career and your experience to date and what you're hoping to get out of LinkedIn. In this one, I've highlighted it in yellow. Now, obviously you wouldn't do this on yours, but I've highlighted in yellow specific areas that I think are really important. So if I just read through this one, ambitious and hardworking trainee solicitor, obviously very relevant for this time in your career, and leading commercial law firm. Maths and tells me the type of firm you're in and what types of roles you'd be suitable for, with a strong passion for corporate and commercial law. I've completed 3 rotations in corporate insolvency and asset finance, again, very important. I've successfully completed the professional practice course part 2 in the Law Society, and I'm now in my final rotation in commercial litigation. Again, straight away, I know where is this person working, what stage are they at, and what rotations they've completed, and that's going to be very relevant for any NQ positions that I might be recruiting for, any other recruiter might be recruiting for. Due to qualify in December 2020 and keen to grow my network with peers on LinkedIn, feel free to drop me a message if you would like to connect. Simply, very succinct, straight away, it's punchy. I got a lot of information in a very short, snappy portion. It's very often left out, but again, this is the first thing that people are going to be looking at, particularly if they're looking on mobile as well. This is going to be the first thing they see. As we all know, everybody is increasingly moving towards mobile, so it is very important that you have that included. So moving on. Work experience. Your work experience should be not unlike the way you would list your work experience out in your CV, starting with the most recent at the top and then working down, making sure that the dates are correct, including any specialisms and including your best accomplishments. So here, if you look at the top there, what position is this person in? Trainee solicitor, very clear, got it. What are they doing at Arthur Cox? Great. The dates, May 2018 to present. That tells me that they're probably going to be qualifying very soon. So any NQs role they have, any NQ roles that I might have, this is somebody to reach out to. So what seats have they done? Corporate, commercial litigation, dispute resolution, and real estate. It's very important as well to put your most recent at the top. So this person is currently within a corporate department. Now, I drafted this myself, so this is just a bit of an outline. You need to tailor to your own, but you kind of get an idea of what I mean here. So I'll just read the first one there. I am gaining varied experience, providing advice on corporate governance, working on large corporate transactions. My responsibilities include responding to due diligence, arranging disclosure letters and disclosure bundles, attending clients, drafting clauses, legal research, drafting company strike-off packs, drafting corporate governance ancillaries. And then just going through the litigation and the real estate. I don't need to read that out now, but you get what I mean. This is very similar to your CV, and it really highlights the experience and the accomplishments. Now, if you are a qualified solicitor and the more experience you get, then you'll have more experience with working on big projects with big name clients and real solid accomplishments. And if you have anything that's been published on the company website that you have been involved with, then I would include it. So long as it's publicly available information, include it. If it's anything commercially sensitive or legally sensitive, obviously don't go near it. But anything that's really big ticket and eye grabbing, absolutely include that in there. So moving on. Education. Now this is similar enough. You want to start with the most recent at the top, working your way down, including place of education, what you studied. Very important as well to include the degree classification. So here, this person got a first class honours. So many people omit that, but it is absolutely relevant. And obviously, if you got a first, that's outstanding. So definitely include that for sure. This person's primary degree was in legal studies, sociology and politics, and NUIG, graduated 2012 with first class honours. That's fantastic. But the LLB, 2013, first class again. It's finished PPC 1 and 2, and then crucially as well, has included the certificate in technology law. So many people will do these diplomas and certificates, and they're absolutely fantastic. Adding education to your CV is fantastic. Don't forget to omit it. Don't forget to include it rather in your LinkedIn profile. You know, people love seeing that candidates are increasingly trying to enhance their skill set. So absolutely include it, and you never know how relevant it might be for any potential role that you are going for. Okay, so moving on then to recommendations. So recommendations is not unlike references. The benefit of these over typical references that you would have accompanying a CV is that this is publicly available for everybody to see, and it really is outstanding, particularly if you have it from senior figures in the industry that you have worked under. So if you have a partner that you're particularly close with on a traineeship, ask them to do a recommendation for you, or in a previous role as a paralegal, or if you're a qualified solicitor in a different firm as a solicitor, whatever it may be. If you can think of anybody, or even clients as well that you might have worked for, that would be phenomenal as well. Very easy to get these recommendations. You go onto the person's profile, there's a more button there at the top near where the headline is, drop down that and click ask for recommendation. Very easily done. And most people, if you've got a good working relationship with them, will be more than happy to do it, and I would really recommend you do that, guys. Then to wrap up, the skills page. Now this is how to get the all-star profile. Now, all-star profile isn't just this kind of waffly thing that just sounds amazing but doesn't really mean anything. It actually is quite important. Having an all-star profile, a completed profile, it works well with the LinkedIn algorithm. Any completed profiles or all-star profiles will be pushed to the top of search results whenever anybody is searching for specific candidates. So if you have an incomplete profile, you're going to be at the bottom of the list. So if you're really on the job market, you really want to make sure that you have that completed profile. And completing it is very simple by finishing off this skills page here. So what the skills are, they're skills that you choose yourself that you believe that you have. So in this example, the person believes that they're well skilled in legal research, intellectual property, and international law. So you want to be picking a minimum of 5, maximum of 50. For me, I would say less is probably more towards the minimum met, and also make sure things that you know that you're truly skilled within, and also areas that people would be likely to endorse you in. Once you do that, you've got the completed profile there. So moving on from that. So just to wrap up the profile piece, guys, I hope you got a bit of information off that. The key facts to remember are: a study by a job matching website shows that recruiters spend on average 6 seconds reviewing a person's LinkedIn profile. First impressions count. 68% of LinkedIn's users are viewing it via mobile. So maximizing the impact of those first 92 characters will be especially important. So that goes back to the profile picture, the headline, and the about section. Those are the things that people are going to see straight away. So you really want to make sure that those are in the best shape you possibly can. Make sure everything is clear, and always think professional. So we've looked there, just go back there. So we've looked there now at completing the profile, and it's important to remember that LinkedIn isn't just about being passive on the platform and having this great profile and not engaging with the platform in any meaningful way. What you really want to be doing is using it as the networking platform that it is. So this is a means for you to be publishing relevant insights from articles that you've read, outlining key quotes and data, and including that data in any posts. So you're creating value add for anybody reading it and any followers. The way to generate more of an audience, again, is just to connect with people within the industry, you know, your peers, any senior people in the industry, any HR managers, partners. By all means, be adding them and then be putting out that value add content. If you've posted anything, any articles to your law firm's website, then absolutely you want to be sharing that on LinkedIn, because anytime anybody's going to be looking up your name, they're going to see this really impressive content that you've put out there. If you're going to be putting out any content yourself, any articles that you're going to be writing or anything that you're going to be sharing, you want to make sure that your online personality matches the personality that you have in real life. The last thing anybody wants is to see this persona online that doesn't in any way relate to the person that they meet when they're in an interview process. So you just want to make sure that that's authentic. So guys, that wraps up the LinkedIn portion of this talk. Now we know that LinkedIn is definitely probably the most important social media for your career, but it's not the only social media aspect or social media platform to be mindful of. So if you look here, and this picture gives us a fairly good synopsis of the other forms of social media out there. I'm sure most of you are members of most, if not all of these, or even more of these. And the important thing about social media is that you do have a digital footprint out there that can in many instances not be erased. So you really do need to be mindful of what it is that you're posting. And as we all know, as I'm sure you've heard and probably even know people, that people can really get in trouble for things that they've posted online, such as photos from nights out that might be somewhat questionable, statements about hating your boss, which is obviously not a good idea, or controversial political opinions. And obviously in the political climate that we have today, it's not too hard to stray into that field. So it's definitely something that you want to be avoiding. Also, very important to note that it's very likely that the firms that you're working in or wish to be working in will have social media policies of their own. So it is very easy to fall foul of these. So you just want to be making sure that you're staying away and avoiding getting yourself into any trouble. A lot of people can see what you're posting online, so avoid, and also take it as real opinion, even if you think you're joking. So avoid posting anything emotional or hateful or any provocative content or anything that could be reasonably interpreted as such. If you think in your mind, is this a little bit questionable to be posting this? Guess what? Probably is. So you're better off just avoiding that. So why is this important? Now, these are some US statistics, and they may not be completely accurate to what happens in Ireland, but I still think it's definitely relevant. So if you look here, a 2017 survey found that 70% of companies used social media to screen candidates when hiring. More than half of prospective employers have found postings that led them not to hire a candidate for an open role. Remember, reputation is everything. So again, I don't know if those statistics would be quite as high, maybe not as many as half wouldn't have got a job, but still you can see how that could easily happen. If somebody does a Google search of your name and up pops this ridiculous Twitter posting from you from a couple of years ago that doesn't at all align with the professional brand that they've seen on LinkedIn or the CV that they have had in front of them. So you just want to be very mindful of that. And we're going to show you going forward how you can manage and clean up that digital footprint in the next couple of slides. But before we get into that, well, what's the worst that could happen? Well, look at this for an example. So this is a Chrysler. We all know Chrysler, the brand. He was a contractor for them, and he thought that he was on his own personal Twitter account, but he was actually on the Chrysler brand's Twitter account, which is the stuff of nightmares. And he posted, "I find it ironic that Detroit is known as the hashtag Motor City, and yet no one here knows how to expletive drive." That's silly, it's a silly tweet just got this guy fired from his job without even thinking, because he thought he was on his own account, but he was actually on their brand account. And that is just one of many, many examples. And I'm sure in your mind now you're thinking of many other examples, similar scenarios such as this. You see a lot of videos going out on WhatsApp and stuff that could very easily get people fired. So it's just about being mindful of that online presence and making sure that the brand that you have in all forms of social media aligns with the professional brand that you have on LinkedIn and in your CV, and how you carry yourself in the professional world. So what can you do about this? Right, well, okay, so it's very simple, but very important to be doing this kind of stuff. You want to do what we call a search and audit. So very simple, do a Google search of your name or of your username on any platforms, or your name followed by Facebook or Twitter or LinkedIn or whatever it is, and just see what is publicly available out there. Facebook allows you to do an audit of your content. So what you can do is you can look through all previous posts and see what's there. And at that point, if you see anything that could be reasonably interpreted as being questionable, you can do something to address that. You want to make sure that you're deleting any inactive accounts. So you might be thinking to yourself, God, I haven't logged into that Facebook account since my college days, or, well, Bebo's gone now, but whatever other social media accounts there are, if you have any superfluous accounts, now is the time to get into them and delete them now, because you don't need them and you never know what might be in there. You want to make sure that you're setting your account to private. So Facebook is very good for that. You can place limits on your content's shareability. You can remove tags and photos, and you can also make sure that you have to give consent for any photos that are going to be tagged of you or any posts in general. So I would definitely suggest that you lock down those privacy settings ASAP. You want to conceal that questionable material as well, if you have it, that is, or anything that could be reasonably interpreted as such. So if you do this audit, you do these searches, and you find, God, that post that I put on Twitter from 5 years ago, it's a little bit questionable now. Now is the time to hide it or delete it as best you can. Again, we appreciate, listen, social media is social media. People, the way they act on Facebook and Instagram isn't going to be obviously exactly how they act on LinkedIn. But you do want to keep it broadly consistent with the professional brand that you're putting out there into the world. Okay, so that wraps up the social media piece and the LinkedIn piece as well. So we're going to move on to what seems like in many people's minds maybe a bit of an antiquated art, the CV, but listen, I can assure you that having an up-to-date and expertly drafted CV is still an absolutely essential tool in your arsenal when you're going onto the job market. In fact, in many cases, it is one of the first things that employers will see prior to taking you forward for interview. Again, the average employer is only going to spend 8 to 10 seconds reviewing your CV before considering you as an applicant to be shortlisted for interview. It's very important when you're trying to get noticed and shortlisted for those interviews, and also employers will use it to formulate questions and to tailoring points in your CV. So you'll be sitting in an interview scenario, and they will be going through your CV and picking out parts of it to ask you questions of. So it's very important that your CV is up to scratch and contains accurate information and a good list of your skills and accomplishments. So what are the top tips for drafting an expert CV? So the first one is be truthful and accurate. Now, I know most people probably won't outright lie, but there might be some embellishments of the truth. You really just want to steer clear of any of that, because there's nothing worse than being in an interview scenario. Somebody asks you a question and you get called out for having clearly lied in your CV. That is a disaster. Just keep it truthful and honest, and just own it. Own any things in your CV. The next one is choosing a clear layout. Again, employers are looking at the CV for maybe 8 to 10 seconds, particularly for any roles which are in high demand. So you want to make sure that it's clutter-free and easy to read. Making sure that there's no typos or grammar errors. Again, everybody will tell you this, but yet time and time again, we see CVs like this. Microsoft Word has got a spell checker. Use it to your advantage. Then do a proofread of it. Then print it out and get your buddy to have a look at the proofread, or your mother or father, or somebody you trust to do that proofreading exercise. It's well worth it. You want to make sure you're tailoring your CV to your audience. So, or for the role that you're applying for. So an easy way to do this is to look at the job spec of the roles you're applying for and any skills or accomplishments that they really appreciate. Make sure that they're peppered throughout your CV. Now, again, you want to make sure that's truthful. You want to make sure it's things that you can actually do and experience that you actually have. But if you can, definitely do be highlighting that and promoting that as best you can within your CV. I want to speak in the first person. Again, speaking in the third person in the CV is just not really advisable. Speaking in the first person is more relatable and more conversational and just makes for a better reading experience for the interviewer or for the potential employer. Explain any gaps that you might have. Typically, having a gap in the CV isn't the worst thing in the world, so long as you can explain it. And in fact, it can be quite an interesting talking point during an interview, particularly if it's something like you went traveling for 6 months. You never know who might be interviewing you. And if you were in Southeast Asia, they might have once been in Southeast Asia too. And it can really be a lighthearted piece of conversation to have during the interview. So definitely be including it and don't be afraid to just deal with that head on. You want to, of course, be including any noticeable achievements, clients, or projects that you've previously worked on. Just giving tangible examples of the work that you've done. Any big clients, any household name clients, absolutely included. Any key achievements that you had when you were working on that project, definitely put it in. As I said on the LinkedIn piece before, if it is publicly available, if it's on your firm's website and you were involved in it, stick it in there, absolutely. And then again, very simply, when it comes to experience or anything like that, or education, start with the most recent and work your way down through it. So let's talk about layout. We touched on it already in this one here, and I think it's a very important portion of the CV because I know a lot of you people, particularly as trainees, you may not have looked at your CV in maybe 3 years, so it can be a bit of a daunting task and a bit of a confusing thing to have to go through. So how to get that perfect layout? Well, let's start with the very first simple thing, your name. So put that at the top of the CV. Then comes the personal statement, and this is something that a lot of people leave out, but I think it's definitely worth putting in, and it typically will consist of 3 components. It's a statement of who you are, your value to your current firm, and your career objectives. Another way to do it as well, rather than just write it out, is to put it in bullet points, which I often find quite a useful way. It's quite punchy and succinct, so you can very quickly put at the top, qualified solicitor December 2019, or trainee solicitor due to qualify at the end of December 2020, and then some bullet points about a little bit about who you are, the firm that you're in, the rotations that you've undertook, and the career objectives, what it is that you're hoping to get out of this application. Then next, your education and professional qualifications, starting with the most recent at the top and working your way down. Professional qualification, the most obvious one will be your solicitor qualification. If you haven't yet qualified as a solicitor but are in the process and due to qualify this year or in March next year, then refer to that in it and just say due to qualify December 2020 or whenever it may be. Employment experience. So making sure, again, going from the most recent, including any key projects, clients, accomplishments. If you've assisted any junior members of staff, put that in there. If you've been involved with business development activities, absolutely put that in there. And also if you've shown that you have an ability to work cross-functionally, again, that is an increasing skill set that employers look for all the time. Then number 5, you want to list your interests, especially if it's any charitable work that you've been involved with or any unique interests that you might have that can really be a talking point during the interview process. By all means, include that in there. And again, if you're a member of any associations, anything like the Irish Women Lawyers Association or the Outlaw Network or any of those organizations, by all means, stick it in there because it's very interesting talking points for during an interview, and it shows that you've got really interesting hobbies and interests outside of work. When it comes to references, literally just put those forwards in there. References available upon request. You don't need to include the references, and you do not need to include any of the names of your referees. You can deal with that at the end of the recruitment process. For now, just put that line in there and just leave it at that. So that is the end of the professional branding section of the talk. And we are going to move on to now the juicy bit, which is probably why most of you are logged on, and that is our legal market insights for 2020. Let's start out with an overview of the year. Well, what a year 2020 has been. Believe it or not, 2020 actually did start out as a really good year. You might not believe me when I say that, but it's true. January and February were really good years for legal recruitment. Then March 2020 happened and our friend COVID-19 came into town and ruined everybody's plans. And it really did put a general pause on the recruitment market for that month. Then in April and May, what we started to see was more of the new entrant global law firms started to get into strategic hiring across areas like employment, restructuring and insolvency, and IP and IT. Now, that was just predominantly the global law firms. And then from September moving onwards, we had the additional law firms kind of opening up other roles at that point. We've seen the traditional top 6 and even the mid-tier firms as well get involved in hiring, even in just the last couple of weeks. What we've seen happen as well is interview processes have gone completely virtual. They're gone really out of the days. There has been some in-person interviews, but mostly it's just been really done virtually. And a lot of these can be quite a lot slower as well. So what you'll see with a lot of the caution in the market at the minute is perhaps they might call somebody for interview and then put the brakes on it for a week or two before determining whether they would take that person forward again. Like, recruitment processes are still going ahead, but it's just to be aware that it can be a little bit slower with everything that's going on in the world. And then, of course, virtual onboarding is happening. This is something which is brand new, and indeed I myself was virtually onboarded into this role in Phoenix at the end of April. And to me, I thought this is going to be a daunting task, and I wasn't sure how it was going to work, but it was actually quite a seamless transition. If you have constant communication with your employers and with your teams, as we do these days with all the technology that's available to us, it really is a seamless transition. We've got remote working. I mean, this is something that we couldn't have envisaged even 12 months ago, everybody en masse working remotely from home, but here we are. Everybody's doing it and doing it pretty successfully as well. People are seeing that working from home isn't really, being on holiday. It really is working. And in some instances, people are working longer hours than they typically would. We've seen, unfortunately, pay cuts in many firms from newly qualified level right up to partner level at as much as 20%, with even optional reduced working hours in some firms as well. And we've also unfortunately seen promotions and bonuses being suspended in some firms. Not all firms are doing this, but it is something that has been happening in some firms. So what's happening? Well, we are starting to see a bit of a cautious road to recovery. So it isn't all bad news. As I said, there has been and there is continuing to be strategic hiring in insolvency, employment, and IPIT, not just in practice, but also within in-house. I have even seen in the last couple of weeks alone some new live corporate roles coming live. In fact, if you'd have said to me 6 months ago that I would be working on an associate M&A role, I wouldn't have believed you, but that is what's happening, and that is within top tier firms. So there is an uptake in those roles, and we expect that is going to continue for the next couple of months and even into the first quarter of next year and beyond. Speaking to our clients around town, we are hearing, and even a lot of our candidates, is that there's an uptick in activity levels in a lot of different practice areas. So that is corporate is really busy, banking, more specifically debt capital markets is very busy, funds is busy, as too is construction, just to name but a few. And we expect that typically whenever you have those increasing activities within those practice areas, sooner or later the demands in the team get stretched and they need to do recruitment. So we would expect going into next year, maybe later within next year, those practice areas will pick up in recruitment. The global law firms, particularly the newer global law firms that have come into town, are in growth mode and is again engaging in strategic hiring. So they are building out new divisions that they may not have had before, or they are expanding existing smaller teams into newer areas and growing the teams out. We've even heard some really good news in the last couple of weeks since the beginning of September that some firms are restoring the pay cuts that they had previously brought in. And in this month, we're hearing as well around town from the clients that we're speaking to, a lot of the partners are telling us that it is under review in other firms whether they will be restoring the pay cuts this month. So hopefully we'll hear more good news on that front. So it does seem that things are cautiously getting better all the time. So looking ahead into 2021, so we've been speaking to clients regularly. In fact, I was speaking to 2 top tier clients just this week alone. And what we've heard, including in the mid-tier as well, is that some firms are intending to keep on the majority of their intakes. What we're also seeing as well is that firms are actively recruiting new trainees, not just for 2021, for 2022 and beyond that into 2023. The reality is that firms know that COVID has caused a massive shock to the economy, but there's a balancing act there because they need to future-proof their business and they need to be looking ahead. So that is why they need to be hiring in the junior members of staff, because they will know ultimately that if they don't, they're going to fall behind in the years to come. So it is that balancing act between protecting the cash flow now and also realizing, we will get through this COVID situation. Speaking to a top-tier firm this week, and they told me that they are still deciding whether they're going to place their own NQs. But typically whenever those decisions are made, that is when you begin to see vacancies arise for NQs and lateral hires begin to hire. But that has been the case for 2019 and 2018. Now, what happens this year, I'm not too sure, because what you see in a lot of firms is a lot of the trainees will make the move over to London. Now, with the restriction of movement with COVID and also with Brexit coming along, will as many post-PPC2 trainees move over to London when they qualify, it's hard to gauge. Also, in previous years, we've had a very strong economy, so people were very likely to move upon qualification. Now, it's hard to know, will there be as much of that, and will there be as many vacancies arising for NQs as there has been in other years? I anticipate having more concrete data on that within the next couple of weeks and even going into November. So again, feel free to drop me a line at any stage if there's any point that you wish to discuss. Again, the strategic demand. So looking into the first half of 2021, what do we expect? Well, we think there's going to be quite a lot of fallout from COVID within employment law related queries. So there's probably going to be an increased demand on employment law teams. We've already seen it in 2020, and I think that that's going to continue into 2021. Unfortunately, again, there's going to be probably an economic shock to this, which is going to, unfortunately for the economy and unfortunately for a lot of small and even maybe some large businesses, there's going to be a lot of insolvency going on. What that means for you guys as NQs is that there's probably going to be an increase in demand for those solicitors. So there will likely be an increase in roles in those areas going into the first half of next year. Looking into the second half of last year, or next year, I should say, sorry, we expect to see an uptick in construction roles, corporate, commercial litigation, again, as a fallout as a result of COVID, and then real estate as well, we expect to be busy. Agile working, I've already touched upon it. Is it going to continue? It seems like it is. All the partners, all the HR managers that we're talking to around town are telling us that it is likely that it probably will continue going into 2021 and beyond. It's likely to be a blended approach, though. I don't think we're going to have 5 days a week anymore. It'll probably be 3-4 days a week in the office and then the rest from home. But yeah, it's likely it'll be a blended approach, and that's really an unfolding situation. But it really is, I think, a positive legacy coming out of COVID, because if you'd have talked about remote working or flexible working arrangements within law firms a year ago or 2 years ago, it was really a very limited concept and not very many solicitors were doing it. But now we've got everybody doing it en masse. So just moving on to the last slide, and you'll be glad to hear that I'm finishing up soon. So we have financial packages that we are seeing from law firms. Now, this is based off data that we have from our clients based off of the end of 2019 and coming into 2020. The salary benchmarking exercises going into 2021 are being conducted now as we speak. And I, in fact, just recently completed a salary benchmarking exercise for a new entrant firm and for a top tier law firm. So they haven't yet decided where they're going to be at. Looking at these figures, I've got high, mid, low. So that is top tier, mid-tier firms, and then smaller firms, either general practices or more regional firms. Everybody's eyes always get drawn to the biggest figures. So just to put that into context, looking at that 75K for NQs, that is really only for a very small, limited number of new entrant law firms. And then again, the 3-year PQE 100K, I can already see people's jaws hitting the floor at that. Again, very limited number of firms that are really paying that kind of level of money. Looking at the mid-tier then, what is a mid-tier law firm? Well, really, it's anybody outside of the top 10 to any firm that's got maybe 10 solicitors or more. So it's a very broad range. So it can be quite hard to give specific data. And if anybody wants to reach out to me and really get into the specifics of the mid-tiers, feel free to drop me a line at any stage. But that is typically what we would see, 55K to 65K. It can be above or below that. And then the smaller general practices, regional firms can typically and would usually be the lowest payers in the market. Looking at sample benefits, again, this varies widely. And some firms, and some of you looking at this are probably going, Jesus, I'm not getting any of that. And that is probably the reality of it. But this is what we see across the market. The best benefits, again, are typically with the newer entrant firms. Bonuses can be in the region of 10 to 50%, 50% at the absolute top. Now, whether they would pay that, it's based around financial targets and then some other BD activities as well to hit those targets. Pension. Again, not everybody gets this. 4 to 6% is what we typically see. So matching, what I mean by that is if you contribute 4%, your firm will match that with a 4% contribution as well. Healthcare, same thing again. That can be maybe as low as €400 contribution to full cover for you and your spouse, which would be a phenomenal package. Dental is quite an uncommon thing. It is more common for the newer entrant firms to have that. And then moving on then, we have death and service, tax saver, bike to work, gym subsidy, annual leave as low as the 20 days statutory and as much as the 30 days annual leave at the absolute top. And then some firms, and this is more common from newer entrants and some top tiers, are doing the sign-on bonuses as well. So that is for 2-year plus PQE and is in the region of not to 10%. So guys, that's really it from me for now. I hope that you found that informative. That is a bit of a whistle-stop tour through professional branding and then also the legal market insights. If there's anything there that you have any questions with, now is the time to get them into the question box. Ruth can field them for us.
James, I might just jump in here for a moment,
Sure.
if that's okay. That was fantastic. Thank you so much. And just before we pass over to Shane, I might just on a couple of points that you mentioned. So, in terms of the social media and the LinkedIn piece, absolutely. And James talked about, you get your profile up, you make sure it's complete, you're really happy with it, but don't just sit there and do nothing with it. In terms of content, guys, it's actually easy enough to become viewed as, okay, Ruth puts up good material, I like this. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. If you follow myself and James, yes, we do a lot of blogs and our own pieces, but sometimes it could be it's an article that I saw in the Irish Times that's really relevant. So for example, EU Commission has decided they are actually going to appeal the Apple state aid case. So it's literally just me reposting that, and I might give it's been confirmed, EU Commission are going to appeal. So it's not just a share with nothing. I do put in some commentary on it. But it's easy to do this. So make sure to take advantage of the hard work you do on setting up your profile, but then maximize it. I would also say that's in terms of law firms that maybe are of interest, as James said, follow them as a company, connect with the peers and the hiring managers in there. But in terms of following them as a company, it's going to do a couple of things for you. One, you're going to get to learn a lot more about this firm. How do they operate? What are they about? Do they have a strong social media presence? Do they do innovative things like podcasts, etc.? So it's going to give you information and make it a more informative decision as to whether is this a place I think I'd even like to work. But secondly, then if you do get to an interview, it is such a benefit, and you are at such an advantage if you can sit there and go, I really love what you do. I attended this webinar. I saw that you did this podcast. I see that you were in, the business post. That will make an employer go, okay, everyone wants to hear that what they do in the place they work is great. So that will get engagement and real, genuine buy-in. So absolutely do that. On the CV piece, James touched on the personal statement. I am a big fan of that at the start. And anyone who's worked with me will know that I always go on about personal statements at all levels. I prefer the bullet point format. And as you become more experienced and as you're in one area and you're working on more clients, that bullet point format will become snappier and more relevant to the kind of clients you work on, what kind of deals, and then you'll touch on pieces like working cross-functionally, the softer sides, but that's something we can advise on. And then just finally on the trends. So exactly as James said, what a year. You couldn't make this stuff up. January, February was ridiculously busy. COVID came, and I'm not going to lie, there was a moment of boom, stop, pause, everything, everyone across all firms. It literally was that dramatic for a while, whilst everyone just sort of got over the shock and took stock. But there has been, as James mentioned, since kind of April, May time onwards, we have seen that strategic hiring in your employment, insolvency, restructuring, or in the law firms, the globals, who are particularly the newer entrants who are trying to still grow or set up brand new divisions. But it was really more top tier around that April, May time. We are starting to see, as James mentioned, some increase in activity, which is fantastic. Like James is working in an associate corporate role, as well as obviously roles on in-house, which we work on as well. So it's cautious optimism. I think, like James said, at the end of the day, law firms are businesses. Their product just happens to be legal advice. They have to future-proof their business. And like James said, they have to balance it between the short term and not getting caught in 3 years plus. So we will get through this. It might be that maybe there aren't as many opportunities for lateral NQ hires this side of Christmas or January, February, but it might be that maybe come Q3, Q4 next year, they really take off. So use this time wisely, use this time to do all the things James mentioned, get your CV in order, get your LinkedIn profile sorted, do your social media audit, and talk to us. Like the next few weeks in terms of the trends and the packages and even opportunities and how many trainees are going to be kept on, all of that, this is all evolving as the weeks go by. So please don't hesitate to reach out to James or myself to discuss this in more detail. We'd be more than happy to do that. But please, if anyone has any questions, do pop them through onto the chat and we can deal with them on the Q&A session at the end. So back to you, James.
Cool, thank you for that, Ruth. Shane, now we're going to move on to yourself. Again, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks. Excuse me. Thanks, James. Some great information there. Firstly, congratulations to anybody that has passed exams and newly qualified. You may not have had much dealings with ourselves in representation and member services in the Law Society previously, but going forward, hopefully you'll be more involved with ourselves. So I'm just going to run through the supports that we offer solicitors and newly qualified solicitors. So I work in career support service, and that is under the representation and member services umbrella. So for yourselves, it would be mainly the career support service and legal vacancies. We also have a small practice support service that would cover, that's run by Justin Purcell. That would cover client care leaflets, practice notes, precedents, access to advisory committees. They carry out information events, videos, leaflets, manuals. The buy and sell service is involved in that as well. And Justin hosts a weekly webinar on relevant topics each week. And that's on a Wednesday at 1 p.m. If you're interested in that. The member services as a whole, for newly qualified, there's a lot of benefit and there's a lot of resources there for newly qualified solicitors, particularly publications and manuals for civil litigation, criminal litigation, conveyancing, wills, probate, estates, etc. So they're all there, they're all available for you. The library's still open, even through all this madness. So there's an online catalogue there that you can access. The Gazette is sent out most months. It's a great way to get a picture of the profession, what's going on at the moment, some quality articles and reports into that. The website, we've had a lot of work done on the website in recent occasions. That's split into our small practice hub, our career support hub, our legal vacancies, and our new wellness hub. Now the wellness hub, it covers the legal mind, which offers independent consultations. There's a consultant colleague, which is an anonymous helpline. So if you're stressed, if you're in financial problems, if there's anything going on in the offices or anything like that, there's a volunteer, anonymous volunteer on the other end of the line for you there. So the career support service, just in more detail there, we offer a helpline, telephone, email. So any general queries, any specific queries that you have are answered as quick as possible. We'll try to get a tight turnaround time on that. You may have issues with job satisfaction, you may have issues with stress at work, you may have issues with your work-life balance, or just changing your career, changing your direction. Give us a shout, email, telephone. That may lead on to then a career consultation, which before the lockdown, before the pandemic, was a one-to-one where you come into the office. Now we carry that out through Zoom, Skype, phone, whatever is the most convenient for yourself. There is a CV review service, and the CV review service, there's plenty of guides and tips on making the best CV for yourself. But it's not a one size fits all type scenario. So when you send your CV into ourselves, it does get an independent review. We do come back with personalized comments and ways in which you can improve your CV. Training, we offer interview training, whether it's a general interview, whether it's competency-based interview training. There are training guides there, there's videos, there's webinars that we've carried out in the past. It can be done one-to-one, and if you have an interview, an upcoming interview that you're anxious about or anything like that, there is a service there where we do carry out mock interviews as well. So we can offer that either over the phone or through Zoom, which is perfect for the time that we're in now. Focus supports, that would be if you are coming out as a qualified solicitor and looking to set up yourself, set up your own practice, or that you're buying into a firm or buying into a partnership. So there's a mentor scheme there that we can assist you with. We also had, recently we used to carry out a returners program for solicitors that were out of the market, out of the industry for a number of years, whether taking care of a family member or generally family and coming back in. That's tweaked a little bit at the moment. We have a resolve program that's kind of going on, and that's for solicitors that are seeking job opportunities in a quiet market. I suppose the best way to say it. we're looking at strategies and we're looking at tactics that can make them stand out. So the next slide there, James. So legal vacancies. The legal vacancies is a newsletter that goes out bi-monthly, so every 2 weeks. Within the newsletter, we'd have career management articles, we'd have job seeking articles, tips. We showcase legal events that are coming up throughout the country. And the most popular aspect of that would be our offbeat opportunities. So Margarzata on the legal vacancy side of things scours looking for opportunities that are a little bit off kilter. So we also have a career tips section, which is a full guide on any sort of career tips that you're looking for, coming from any angle. And alongside that, we have the career spotlight, which James and Ruth you might recognize a few familiar faces in there. The well-being supports, as I said, we've just gone ahead there a little bit, have we? Yeah. The CV register, you can put your CV up there. You can get job seeker profiles. There's a section there for trainees. There's a section for locums, and short-term project work is the main focus of the CV register. The regional opportunities, that goes along with the legal vacancies newsletter, where we focus on certain regions for job opportunities, and it changes from each newsletter to each newsletter. We have in the past gone out to certain regions and carried out consultations with solicitors, but obviously with Zoom and everything like that, it's not required at the moment. We wouldn't be allowed out. So next slide then, just the other supports that we would offer. The Women in Leadership Mentoring program is very, very popular for any female solicitors that are looking to advance their careers, whether it's in-house, public sector, private sector. It's carried out in June, so it's finished for this year, but look out for next year. Applications are coming in June. Basically, you are matched, depending on what way you're looking for your career to go, depending on what way your background is and your experience to date, you're matched up with a relevant mentor. So it's not just somebody that's basically senior or anything like that. There's a quite high threshold in matching the mentor to the mentee. So look out for that in June. There's a new members initiatives, which is quite recent. The new members initiatives, that they are carrying out webinars every Tuesday evening at 7 p.m. And I have some details on that here. Bear with me. So they've covered topics such as finding work in hidden job markets, impressing at interview. Upcoming ones would be strengthening your self-confidence, success at company interviews, changing your career direction, personal brand management. So get in contact if you are interested in registering for any of those webinars. Wellbeing supports I've already gone through. That's the Law Care, that's the Legal Mind, an independent consultancy. The Wellbeing Hub holds all the supports and all the resources there. Enterprise supports, then that would be the mentor scheme, which is an informal guidance on a voluntary basis if you're looking to set up your own practice or go down that route. There's also a PC and a PII finance scheme. That's with the Bank of Ireland, and that is criteria based. But do get in contact and we'll be able to pass you on to the relevant peoples. And then the library itself, as I said, the library is still open, even with the lockdown and even with the constraints with getting into public places. But there is an online catalogue there. They do offer copies of law reports, legislation, there's electronic precedents. They can all be emailed out to you. In regard, they do post books out to you if that's necessary. And there's a law watch that goes out every week with the latest kind of judgments and legislation, which would be very important for newly qualified coming into the market. That's really it. It is the Law Society is one of a few, if not the only profession that has this level of support. So we are there, of course, to assist you. So don't be afraid to reach out.
Cheers, Shane. Appreciate that. There's definitely a lot of information in there that I think people will find useful as soon as they qualify solicitors. There's a lot of resources there that they may not have been aware of. So really do appreciate your time and explain that very clearly to us. So thank you again for joining us today.
Thanks for having us, James.
Not at all, Shane. Thank you. So that wraps it up, guys. I really appreciate your time and attention today, and hopefully you found it informative. We're just going to field a couple of questions now. Pass over to Ruth, if you have anything there, Ruth, for us.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to say, Shane, thank you so much for that. And I absolutely agree. What I find very useful, guys, Shane mentioned it, is the legal newsletter, to sign up for that, and the Law Watch, because the newsletter in particular, you've so many information, so much information in one place that's coming actively into you. And just like, it is phenomenal, the resources that are there from the Law Society, particularly things like the Wellbeing Hub. This is a stressful time. And when you qualify, this is a whole new transition again. And it can take, both James and I both know from experience, that can take, some time to kind of get used to. So it's great to know that these supports are there. Once you're registered on the roll, these are accessible. So Shane, we really appreciate your time. Thanks a million. So yeah, there are a couple of questions coming through, thankfully. So the first one is in from Niamh Toohey. Thanks a mil, basically saying, thanks guys, it's been very informative. She wants to get more of a sense on what we're hearing on remote working going forward, and whether we've received any feedback from firms on whether remote working is likely to continue as a regular feature in a post-COVID environment. I'm happy to take that one if you like, James. And yeah, essentially, the reality is most firms are still working from home. People might need to go in, particularly at partner level, occasionally to print documents, etc. Some firms have made it very clear and have already said, we definitely won't be back in the office for the rest of this year. Other firms, and more so maybe the larger and the top tier and the globals, a lot of them were actually planning to go back in, and were getting ready to go in on a phased basis at the start of September. And then, of course, we had the government recommendations, which has changed things. So the landscape has changed again. To answer your question, Niamh, absolutely. And I think James would agree. From talking to partners, from talking to hiring managers, head of people, etc., absolutely the consensus is it is going to be a blended approach moving forward. So I don't think it's not going to be 5 days from home, but it's going to be a blended approach. And what's really interesting is, from talking to candidates, and I am speaking for myself here as well, I can't wait to get back in to the office a couple of days a week. I really miss, and people are saying that, they miss the camaraderie. I was talking to somebody yesterday, and they're in a kind of transactional role, and they said it just feels so full on that, normally they'd be kind of going, oh God, I need to get out of that. Can we go grab a coffee? Or, running up to someone's office kind of going, can I just sense check something with you? What do you think? And they just said it feels like everything's on them way more. So I think yes is the answer. We will see a blended approach moving forward. I mean, it is phenomenal. There was a time, like I remember even, in my day, which isn't all that long ago, it just would never, ever, ever have happened that a lawyer would work from home. They would lose good people before that would happen. And it was starting to come in with the global law firms were offering it. So this was a big unique sell of a lot of the global law firms that were coming into the market in the last year or two. But post-COVID, I am pretty confident in saying that, from speaking to the market and to our clients, it is going to be a blended approach moving forward. When companies start coming back into the office, that's another question. If things keep going the way they are, I wouldn't be surprised if for maybe a lot of firms it's maybe not until January. But hopefully that does answer your question. One thing that just came to mind, and I was just thinking about, okay, what questions are we often asked? Just on the CV, very frequently, I'm sure James gets this as well, the whole, does it have to be only 2 pages? I would say no. Like, opinions vary. I would say no, it's not a hard and fast, it has to be 2 pages. If your CV is going to look all squashed, you're leaving out information that's potentially relevant, then absolutely not. If it goes into, say, 2.5 pages, then that's fine, as long as what is in there is relevant and necessary. And again, I am a fan of a personal statement, and if that is the thing that pushes it on to 2.5 pages, I'm okay with that, as long as I say, everything that's there is relevant. Other thing I'd say we're asked, James, quite a bit is, we talked about LinkedIn. People would often say, oh God, I didn't think I was able to look, or I should have looked at the interviewer's profile before the interview. And we would say, we obviously do detailed interview prep, and we would put that as one of the points. Absolutely. Make sure you go onto the firm's LinkedIn and look at their social media, but equally 100% look at the hiring manager's profile before an interview. It could be that you both went to the same school, you know, it could be that you both did the same Erasmus, you know, year, etc. There could be real synergies there. And it shows that you are doing a bit of homework and a bit of research on the company. So it's a definite yes, don't have any concerns there on that front.
Fantastic. Yeah, thank you, Ruth. There is just one other question here that just popped up in my chat box there. I'll just read this out. This is just from an anonymous. It says, in terms of what you should post to LinkedIn, ideally, I would like to join a practice area, which I have not been able to do as part of my training contract. When posting articles, etc., to my LinkedIn, should I focus on only areas I have actually worked in and might be more likely to receive offers in, or can I post material concerning the practice area I would ideally like to join? It really depends. There's kind of two things there. It's the one that you're most likely to get an offer in, or the area that you'd like to join. You really need to make that decision. I mean, if you're really going to go and consider that area that you've never worked in before, then yeah, maybe it is. But the only danger is there is that you might be posting material that you aren't a subject matter expert in. So it could be, you know, a little bit risky to start commenting on things that maybe don't have the experience in. So really, it's just about posting relevant content to the market in general. Whatever kind of legal news stories you see that might be of relevance to that market, I would encourage you to post that. In terms of maybe moving towards a practice area that you haven't trained within, really the best thing to do there is to make that move sooner rather than later. The longer that you spend as a qualified solicitor before transitioning to a different practice area, the harder it is to make that transition. If you don't have experience within your training contract in that practice area, definitely makes it that little bit trickier. So if it's a completely separate area, let's say if you want to go from litigation to corporate, might be a challenging move unless it's something that is somewhat related. So you just need to really be mindful of that. I think, is it really something that you want to do? Is, again, if it's something that you don't have experience in your training contract, I'd be careful of that, because it mightn't be everything that you think it would be. But again, that is probably something that we could deal with more directly. So if you want to drop me a line on that, I can really have that conversation in depth and really understand what it is that you're wanting and assist you in that way. I think that would be probably more beneficial than posting the content for that reason.
Yeah, and just on that, James, what I'd say to people is, you know, if you are thinking of that, don't be afraid to reach out to qualified solicitors, whether it's in your own firm or in another firm, and say, I'm a trainee, I haven't practiced in the space, but it is an area of interest. I would potentially like to move in there. Can we have a coffee? Or can we do a Zoom call? People will help. When you say to someone, can you help me? Would you give me 15 minutes, 20 minutes of your time? People typically say yes. So the best way for you to find out what an area is actually like, particularly if you've no experience whatsoever in it, is ask someone for that call, for that chat, or whatever it is. And the other thing I would say is, you know, you probably would want to be having those conversations with the relevant person in your firm, whether it's head of trainees or HR or, you know, a partner or whoever it is, to let them know, because they might just think, well, I don't think James would have any interest in this area. Sure, he's never done a rotation there. So don't assume, you know, they're not mind readers either. So I would say you need to let them know that this is something you're thinking of, and also kind of find out what are the realistic chances of you getting that, or should you be looking elsewhere? Because the reality is, if it's an area that a lot of people now want to go into, and they have 2 trainees who did rotations in that space, there might not be a spot for someone who hasn't any experience there. So talking to people in that space yourself privately, and then I think to your employer to say, this is what I'm thinking, is there an opportunity here, is a good thing. But yeah, absolutely, pop James a mail or link him with him. I can't wait, guys. My LinkedIn, I'm expecting like, I don't know, 100 different LinkedIn connection requests. But you know, do please link in with myself and James.
Absolutely. Well, I think that's us for today, guys. Really, again, Shane, I'd like to thank you so much again for taking time out of your day to join us today, giving us that useful insights. Anybody watching this, still listening, and please, by all means, drop me a line. Any direct questions that you have, I'll be happy to answer them, and have any phone calls to answer those questions. But again, thank you for joining us again today, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks very much. Bye.